So you're seeing this because the flu is alive and well, and I want to keep you guys that way. So I want to share with you a video today instead of coming to class. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. So here we go. All right. So starting with the war, we were talking about the Rough Riders, I believe, and how Teddy Roosevelt had put together such an unusual group. Teddy Roosevelt was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and what he's going to end up choosing to do is he is going to put together his own combat group. He chooses a cavalry division because of his experience with horses, and he has a good job with having people to go with him. Some things that you're going to see with this that's really good is that one, when they arrive in Cuba, this group of guys, they're this mixed up kind of ragtag. Some of them were outlaws, some of them were very wealthy, and they all come together and they work very hard and they become a symbol of America and what America can do in this war. The war is very, very quick, but Teddy Roosevelt and his men have their most famous battle at the Battle of San Juan Hill. It is so significant because they're a cavalry unit, and as a cavalry unit, they successfully conquer the hill without horses, which is pretty accomplished. The thing about fighting in Cuba, the war only lasts for like 113 days. It's a really fun war. We celebrate a lot. The American soldiers sing things like "It'll be a hot time in the old town tonight," so much that the Cubans think that this is our national anthem. Some other things that you want to know is about the fighting in the Philippines. Now, in the Philippines, the U.S. fleet is very much superior to the Spanish fleet, and we don't realize that until we get there. But their ships consist of all wooden battleships. And so our ships go in under Commodore Dewey and just blow them out of the water. The Filipinos are all like, yay, this is awesome, because they wanted to be independent from Spain. Not so fast, Filipinos. Not going to happen yet. So what happens is we end up signing what we call the Treaty of Paris 1898, and this treaty makes Spain officially free of all of its colonies. We gain Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and as we promised, we give Cuba her freedom. It was part of the Teller Resolution that said we did not want control. Now, the reaction in the Philippines is going to be uproar because we gave Cuba freedom and not them after making those kind of promises. So what happens is a revolutionary by the name of Emilio Aguinaldo is going to continue the hostilities, and he is going to lead the fight until they swear allegiance to the U.S. in 1901. In return for that action, we are going to intern many of them, much like the Cubans were by the Spanish, the whole reason the yellow journalists got us mad and we started this war. So here we are. Continuing. Can you tell I'm about to leave and go home? Oh, good. Okay, so continuing on, some other things that are going to take place. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was gained. This wasn't really quite the same fight. At the time, we had no intention of making Puerto Rico a state. We did pass a couple of important acts. First of all, we set up a government with an upper house and a lower house and a governor, and they eventually get to elect all of those positions. The most interesting one is the Jones Act of 1917. The Jones Act of 1917 is going to make Puerto Ricans U.S. citizens. That means that's why someone born in Puerto Rico is as much a citizen as someone born in any other part of the U.S. I wasn't sure if we covered that a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to make sure to go back into it. Panama. Let's talk about Panama. So when the Spanish-American War begins, it is very difficult to get our ships all the way around the bottom and back to the other side if we need them. So what we start to talk about doing is how do we avoid that issue? Well, we come up with a solution. The United States offers to purchase from Colombia land. In fact, it wasn't a purchase at first, it would have been a lease. See, Colombia owned Panama. And so we wanted to lease an 8-mile wide strip for 99 years. Well, Panama feels like that they can get a better deal if they hold out. And so they decide to reject the treaty. Now, the year is 1901, and the president is now Teddy Roosevelt because the previous president has died. He gets shot. He was elected in a 1900 year, which means he's going to die. And so Teddy Roosevelt says, not playing that. He doesn't work that way. So he goes to his people, and the next thing you know, they show up in Panama. The people in Panama, they kind of broker this secret deal. And so all of a sudden, Panama declares themselves independent, and a U.S. battleship is there, and they're like, yeah, and we support them. And so shortly after that, we gave Panama a gift of $10 million. And shortly after that, as a thank you for all of our help in the Panamanian Revolution, they rewarded us with a 10-mile wide strip forever for free. It's yours. Now that sounds good, great, and wonderful, but of course we're going to give that back in the 1970s under President Jimmy Carter's Panama Canal Treaty. Pretty controversial still today. Pretty controversial still today. Okay, next, let's talk about China. You look at China, China was split into spheres of influence. What that means is that this was a place where countries could exclusively trade with China. The problem is if you look at a spheres of influence map, those spheres of influence did not include the US. Oh, we were hot because there's China. We have all this stuff we want to sell to them, and so we want to be able to be included in this. So what we decide to do to remedy this problem is that we get John Hay, our Secretary of State, to write letters. The letters are called the Open Door Notes. What do the Open Door Notes do? They go to all these nations and they make them a promise. The promise was, hey, look, we want to all have chances to trade with China. So this will be great for you. And he convinces each section that this is in their betterment. The good thing about this for us is it guarantees that no nation will exclusively have China, which our main goal was just for us to trade with China. So it works beautifully, except the Chinese people didn't necessarily agree because we just kind of went in and said, here's how it's going to be and who's going to take over. And so the Chinese people are going to revolt in what becomes known as the Boxer Rebellion. Now, the Boxer Rebellion is led by a group of Chinese fundamentalists that actually literally, we call it the Boxer Rebellion. It's a little less, but they're going to revolt. They kill a lot of outsiders. The outsiders fight back against them. They don't like the new technology. They don't like the new ways. And so it ends with eventually a peace treaty, and we get to keep that influence. So 1900, we have now put Teddy Roosevelt in, as we said. Another way he is going to be recognized is in 1905, he orchestrates the Treaty of Portsmouth. This is significant because it is the president weighing in on world affairs. That is significant because it's going to mean that in Maine, he organizes a treaty between Russia and Japan, and for that, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize. So that's pretty awesome. He also is followed up by William Howard Taft that we'll talk about perhaps a little bit later. And William Howard Taft is going to be our president from 1908 to 1912. And his foreign policy is dollar diplomacy. Dollar diplomacy is about trading bullets. Instead of those, investing money. So we don't go in with military force. We instead go in and create financial stability. That's what these nations really want. And it's actually pretty good. We use it in Nicaragua, Honduras, as well as with some other actions. Dominican Republic also, so it's good. The president after him, who's going to be elected in 1912, is Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson is going to struggle between a few ideas of watchful waiting and moral diplomacy. He believed in spreading democracy to other nations and protecting them. Really, he's kind of a little bit of a question mark because Wilson struggles a lot with a little revolutionary who keeps attacking Texas, and his name is Pancho Villa. Villa had wanted to be the president of Mexico. We kind of backed another guy. He gets a little upset about that. And so because of that, he starts attacking us. So how do we respond to that? Well, Wilson sends in General John J. Blackjack Pershing to chase him through Europe. That does not go over well with Pancho Villa. So what Villa starts to do is he's leading him all over Mexico. Nobody wants outsiders in their country. It doesn't matter who you're chasing. And so eventually they are so mad at us that they're ready to go to war against us. 1914 rolls around. War has broken out in Europe. Do we really want to tick any more people off? We're like, okay, look, we're going to pardon Pancho Villa. And that's exactly what Woodrow Wilson does. Now, switching gears just a little bit, I want to talk to you about America on the home front, which is going to be the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era. The other thing I have set for us to talk about tonight, and I thought we already did talk a little bit about progressives. I'm looking back at our syllabus. Let's see. Sorry, yeah, okay. So tonight we were going to come in and talk some about progressives. So who are the progressives? Well, the progressives are people who wanted to make improvements in society. And so why do they matter for us? Well, for a lot of reasons. One of those is that they expose the evils that existed there. You have several people in the progressive realms. You have a famous progressive governor that I feel like we would be amiss if we did not mention, and that is a gentleman whose name is Fighting Bob La Follette, Robert La Follette, and he uses his position to monitor public utilities. Now, you did a large reading that addressed the progressives, and that was your case study, and it talked about how they brought about the Australian secret ballot. Some other things you're going to know about progressives: these are middle-class women, and some cool things. One, you have one group of women called the National American Women's Suffrage Association, or NASA, as I like to call them, and they are going to fight against what have been going on with women not being able to vote. Now, they pick a different way to do it. They don't approach voting as an issue about women and on a state level. They approach voting as a national level. And so they actually fight for women to vote for a national amendment. And they get ignored by the president. He will not basically endorse them. And then he starts having them arrested. Well, that's no bueno. And so they make the decision to fight back. And what's the best way to fight back? You make the president look bad. What's the best way to make the president look bad? Get him to arrest women. It never looks good when you arrest women, especially these white middle-class upper women. Ooh, not good, early 1900s. And so he starts to arrest them, and these girls go to prison, and they are legit. They refuse to eat. Yes, I'm telling you, it would not have been me. I'm an eater. They refuse to eat. And so it looks like they're going to starve to death under their leader, Alice Paul, to the point to where the president says, I will enforce the amendment and support it, and the 19th Amendment will end up passing. Some other things we're going to see, you're going to see three different progressive presidents. The first, of course, is Teddy Roosevelt, who comes in 1901. Teddy is going to come in as a trust buster, and he is the first president to use trust busting effectively. He breaks up 44 trusts. He also is going to monitor the railroads with the Elkins and the Hepburn Act. Another thing you're going to see with Teddy Roosevelt is the New Lands Reclamation Act. This is where he sets aside lands for national parks, as well as the Antiquities Act, which is where he puts protections on items that are rare, such as antiques and war memorabilia. Teddy is also known for not only his trust busting, but also his food legislation. There was an author at the time by the name of Upton Sinclair who wrote The Jungle, and he exposed the evils in the food industry. And by doing that, people like Teddy Roosevelt said, we need to change that. And so he passes the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act. Meat inspection said that any meat that crossed state lines had to be inspected. Pure Food and Drug Act said that food and labeling had to be truthful. And so Teddy Roosevelt in 1908 does not run again because he had made a promise he would not. And so he is going to be replaced by President William Howard Taft. And so William Howard Taft comes in and he passes the Keaton-Owen child labor law. This is going to manage to end goods that are sold across state lines that are made by child labor. He also manages to break up 90 trusts. 90, that's double what TR did, but he's quieter, so he really doesn't brag about it that much. He's a big guy, 6'5", way over 300 pounds. He also manages to pass the Mann-Elkins Act, which is going to strengthen his railroad legislation. And he really pushes for amendments that bring change. But he does manage to tick off progressives. Why? Because one of his promises was to lower the tariff. However, Congress passes the highest tariff we had had in quite some time. That was called the Payne-Aldrich tariff. Now, if you promise to lower the tariff, but you let a high tariff pass, a lot of people aren't going to like you. And so this puts him in a really bad spot. Teddy Roosevelt made a promise to run again, tried to run again. The Republicans shut him down, and so he started his own party. He ends up calling it the Bull Moose Party. Why, you ask? Well, it's kind of interesting. It starts as the Progressive Party, and then he's giving all these speeches, and this bartender who does not like him comes out from behind the bar while he's speaking and actually shoots him. Teddy Roosevelt stands there, holds the bullet wound, and finishes the speech. How awesome is that? And so then the guy basically is arrested, and Teddy finishes speaking. They're like, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I am as strong as a bull moose." So where this brings us to is Teddy wants to run again in 1908 because he believes that Taft has abandoned his policies, but the party won't let him. So he says, "You know what? I'm doing my own thing." And so he comes in. He isn't successful in getting reelected, but he is successful in splitting the Republican vote, which means that Taft is not elected. And so the Democrats elect an unknown New Jersey governor, had also been the president of Princeton. But get this, he was a Southerner at heart, which is going to be kind of important. Woodrow Wilson, highest educated president we've ever had. He is going to pass a stronger trust law called the Clayton Antitrust Act. It strengthens the Sherman Antitrust Act and gives it more specific language where it is easier to break up trust. He is also going to pass the Underwood tariff, which significantly lowers tariff rates. So this is huge. He also, under his leadership, we see the 16th Amendment, which establishes graduated income tax, the 17th Amendment, which establishes direct election of senators, the 18th Amendment, which starts prohibition. That happened actually during World War I to kind of help preserve certain foods. And lastly, the 19th Amendment, which gives women the right to vote. But Wilson does have some limits. His limit is with minority voting rights and with minority issues. He is going to segregate government buildings. Come on, Wilson. I mean, you did everything else right, but then you screwed this one up. And so, as we said, Wilson has a lot of progressive ideas, except for how he treats minorities. And if you look at those, it looks like he's doing a great job. But then World War I breaks out, and it puts Wilson in a position where he's stuck trying to make decisions as to which way to go. That is a very fast version of what we were going to talk about tonight. I hope it's beneficial to you. I know it's recorded, so you can slow me down a little bit. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And I am going to see you very soon. I had told you that February 12th, we would do a study session. And so I will actually come in on February 12th, and I'm going to talk about World War I. You are welcome to attend. I hate to change the schedule on you like that. Attendance will not be taken, but bonus attendance will be taken. So there you go. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.